Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. Hello, how's it going today? Hope you're having a wonderful day. I am back with more positive, feel-good stories to enhance your day, I guess. Hopefully it brings a smile to your face amidst all of this chaos that we are all still going through. But my first story is about a woman who created a neighborhood giving tree. And it's pretty cool. So she was making some homemade face masks, and she kind of created this giving away tree. It's pretty cool. So her name is Pickens. She's 55 years old, and she originally started making her cloth masks for healthcare workers after her local hospital just started experiencing shortages amidst all of the outbreaks, of course. So originally, she just wanted to donate 100 of her masks to the medical workers. But then I guess some of her family members and friends began to ask about them, and they kind of wanted one of their own. So since then, she's made more than 400 masks, and of course, she's paid for all of this out of her own pocket as a doctor's office employee. So she realized that she could not hand all these masks directly to her neighbors without violating the social distancing rules. So she decided to hang them on a local tree that's in her neighborhood, so people that were passing by could take the mask at their convenience. Basically just grab it. So she actually made a Facebook post about her giving tree, and since then, the masks have just been a huge hit in her community. She says it was really cool to see people driving up, grabbing a mask, and leaving. It's been a hit. I'm a giver, not a taker, so I feel really good. So the tree, the way that they've kind of decorated it, they can only hold about 30 masks at a time, and I guess most of them are gone within a day of them being put up on the tree. So she's always constantly making new masks, and will go restock the tree, the tree's inventory, she calls it, and she's actually made special masks for firefighters, first responders, paramedics, and grocery store employees. So she's just said that she's determined to continue doing this for as long as the pandemic goes on. My next story is about a pretty devoted father who spent a lot of his time in lockdown creating something for his son. And it kind of turned out that he decided he kind of had a new calling after all this happened. So he decided he kind of had a new calling after he built this really incredible video arcade game thing for his son, just amidst all the lockdown and craziness. So he built literally a full-size retro arcade machine, and it has classic games like Sonic and Mario. He just created this for his son could play during the lockdown. So he's 32 years old. His name is Steve Addison, and it took him about 3 weeks to kind of design and put together this 2-player game machine. And it's for his son Felix, who's just 3 years old. So he's actually never had any kind of experience doing anything like this. He used an old Atari computer as well as arcade buttons and wood that he purchased off of eBay for his painstaking project, and he basically put this together. But he can, his son Felix can play all the classic games. There's Pac-Man, Pong, Tetris, Space Invaders, Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Super Mario, Sonic the Hedgehog, all these different things, and he can do this all from the comfort of his own home. Pretty insane that he did this. So Steve is actually an assistant manager at McDonald's, but amidst all of the coronavirus outbreaks, he is not working since the fast food restaurant obviously closed. So he says, I knew it was inevitable that we were going into lockdown, so I made a start just before self-isolation rules fully kicked in. So I've always kind of wanted an arcade machine, but when I suggested the idea to my wife, she kind of laughed me out of the room. My DIY capabilities were little to none, so she thought something would go wrong or cutting off my finger or something. He says, it got to the start of March and I just wanted a little project to keep my mind focused on something and keep me busy since I knew work would be shut down. It was a slow progress at the start because I was still at work, but when we went into full lockdown, that's when I got to finish it all off. It took about 2 weeks to plan and a week to build. Most of the games are ones I have fond memories of that I wanted to share with my son Felix. The little man and I have been pretty much on it every day since. I've seen pictures of this thing. It is so cool. It is literally like an old-fashioned arcade game made out of wood. It's so cool. So Steve was pretty pleased with how the end product turned out. It does look pretty cool. And his wife, who was quite skeptical, her name's Carrie. She's actually a mental health nurse at NHS. And she definitely had her doubts at first, but it's pretty cool and it all came together. So he says, I painted all the characters individually myself. There's a few of them which my little boy chose. He recognized ones like Pikachu, Mario, and I added ones like Ryu and Link from The Legend of Zelda. He loved seeing all those characters come to life. So he got to cut out all these different pieces. He sanded them down, joining them all together. And he says it was the specs of it all that took the most time because I'm not a joiner, not in any way, shape, or form. I work at McDonald's. I've not got any skills in this area, so I took my time with it. I made sure I planned everything quite meticulously and stuck to them. So with all of that being said, he actually had such an amazing time creating this arcade game, and now some of his friends are actually asking him if he can build some of their different versions for their houses. And he says that he would absolutely love to because he found a newfound passion for woodwork and joinery and just making this all come to life. So now he's going to be starting to make these arcade games for his friends. He can maybe sell them off, but it's his newfound passion. He says, when work reopens, I'm going to put it into my staff room for my colleagues to play on their breaks. I find it quite flattering that people think I have DIY skills, but I can guarantee them that I don't. I struggle with DIY. I like working with computers mostly, but if I put my mind to it, I got it done and got a really good outcome of it. Alright, and so my next story, you might have heard of this supermarket in the US. The supermarket chain Publix has announced a new initiative to purchase fresh produce and milk to assist farmers impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. So Publix will be donating these products directly to Feeding America member food banks in its operating area. And so the initiative, which is kind of expected to result in more than 150,000 pounds of produce and 43,000 gallons of milk donated to Feeding America food banks during the first 7 days. That's what they're expected. And then it's expected to run for several weeks. The program will support Florida produce farmers, southeastern dairy farmers, and the growing number of families that are looking to Feeding America for fresh fruits, vegetables, and milk during this pandemic. As a food retailer, we have the unique opportunity to bridge the gap between the needs of families and farmers impacted by the coronavirus pandemic. In this time of uncertainty, we are grateful to be able to help Florida's produce farmers, southeastern dairies, and families in our communities. So that was Publix CEO Todd Jones. With numerous reports of different farmers that are really having troubles with selling their produce and milk, most of a result because of school and restaurant and hotel closures, right? They're not able to sell their stuff. That's why Publix hopes to address the needs of that farming community and then the local partner food banks through this initiative. says, we are thrilled about Publix's initiative to buy additional milk from Southeast Milk for processing and donation to Feeding America member food banks. It's a win-win for our farmers who are feeling the impact of decreased demand and families who are in need of nutrition-rich milk during this pandemic. Like so many others right now, Florida farmers are in a time of need. We are humbled Publix is purchasing additional fresh vegetables from us and other local farms to donate food banks throughout the Southeast. So these are just little quotes from different farming people. The Southeast Milk Incorporated President Joe Wright as well. Everyone's just really grateful that Publix has come forward with this initiative. All right. Well, it's time for a little bit of a break, but when we get back, I have more feel-good, happy stories to share with you, so don't go anywhere.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Okay, we are back, and I actually have some really good news about air pollution. So, of course, since the midst of all the coronavirus outbreaks and all the shutdowns that we've had all over the world for so many different things, they are saying in this new report that the air pollution has fallen to record new lows in some of the most polluted global cities. So it's IQ Air. It's a global leader in air quality data and solutions, and they just published a COVID-19 air quality report. So this report shows that air pollution levels in 10 major global cities have dropped by as much as 60% during all of these kind of mandated lockdowns all over the world while the COVID-19 pandemic is going on. So the report examined fine particle pollution in 10 cities while lockdowns were in place compared to the same period in 2019, as well as during the same periods in previous 4 years. So cities included that were in the report: London, Los Angeles, New York, Madrid, Mumbai, Rome, Wuhan, all these different places, and all cities that are included in the report, except for Rome, experienced a reduction in air pollution levels during lockdown periods compared to the same periods in 2019. So I guess here are some of the most dramatic drops in the air pollution. I'll share some with you. Let's see here. So Delhi experienced a 60% reduction in PM2.5 readings compared to the same time period in 2019. The hours for which Delhi experienced unhealthy rated air pollution fell from 68% in 2017 to 17% during this lockdown in 2020. Let's see, Wuhan saw a reduction in air pollution of 44% during the lockdown when compared to 2019. Air pollution in Mumbai was down 34% during the lockdown. So those are some pretty big ones. The automobile dependent, of course, Los Angeles, saw its longest streak of clean air on record. So during this lockdown period, fine particle pollution in LA was down 31% when compared back to the 2019 numbers, and down 51% when compared to the previous 4-year average. New York City also saw air pollution drop 25% as a result of all the lockdown. So London and Madrid saw more modest reductions in air pollution at 9% and 11%. But yeah, so Delhi, Mumbai, and Los Angeles experienced their best March air quality on record in 2020. So the CEO of IQ Air says, across the globe, the coronavirus pandemic has had a monumental impact on the way we live. While the human and economic costs are devastating, we're also witnessing how much of air pollution comes from human activity. The drastic reduction in air pollution during COVID-19 lockdowns shows how our habits and behaviors directly impact the air we breathe. That's an important insight after this unique Earth Day. So of course, coronavirus lockdowns have been ordered all over the world, school closings, businesses, all those types of things. But with all those types of things that have been probably driving us all a little bit insane, there are some really great environmental benefits. So let's try to keep our thoughts in the positivity area. There's still good things happening, especially with our environment. Even though we can't go outside, the environment's loving it. Now, speaking of the environment, there were also some record-breaking amounts of solar electricity generated in Germany. So there was recently some really sunny days in Germany over just recently, and they saw some really great breaking records, I guess, for their solar electricity that was generated. So in Europe, it's already 100% more expensive to finance, supply, staff, and operate coal-fired plants compared to renewable facilities, while in historically coal-glutted nations, of course, like the US, India, and China, it's already 50 to 60% more costly. But the recent lockdown orders for COVID-19 in Germany has really come in at a measurable effect, I guess, with these sunny days as well. So, like we were just saying, during all these COVID-19 lockdowns, there has been the reduction of air pollution in so many different places around the world. But not only are these shutdowns rewarding the solar market with really clear skies, but they're actually lagging coal market, and it's taking further body blows as the demand really plummets from the shutdown of stores and office buildings. So particularly in Germany, the renewable sources are the first to enter grid circulation, and since the decrease in energy demand, consumers are actually using less power than is available. So this is meaning the electricity generated from a coal plant might not be only unutilized, but unpaid for. So the services that, are desired by consumers are simply being fulfilled by those most readily capable of fulfilling them, if that makes sense. So basically, this applies to, everybody that are turning the lights on in your house. Also applies to buyers and sellers in the energy sector. But they're saying that this is kind of the simple explanation. So Johan runs an energy investment firm, and when looking to buy shares of a power producer, his maximum price for carbon-based power is €5,000 per share, and for renewable power, €8,000 per share. And he can afford to pay more for renewables because he stands to make more money from those shares. So then there's Jurgen, who runs a carbon-based power source, can only afford to sell €10,000 per share because of the current market demands for renewables. This difference of the valuation of €5,000 between Jurgen and Johan prevent a sale from being made. And so Jurgen must either find a willing buyer, a way to reduce operating cost, or another energy product. So, whether catalyzed from climate activism, science, or whichever technology costs the least to operate, just these simple supply and demand forces are what's really causing people to put their money in renewables. And money talks, as we all know. So let's, for all of you animal lovers out there, you're especially gonna love this next story I have for you. Some beaches have seen some huge increase in leatherback sea turtle nests after all of the travel restrictions in Florida and Thailand. So the turtles are coming back. Thailand is the latest nation to make headlines after the Thai government placed a ban on international flights and a strong encouragement to stay home. Throughout the whole coronavirus shutdown, Thailand's tourism economy, that's what Thailand really is, right? It's all that tourism stuff. The economy, a season of peace, and the salvation for rare leatherback sea turtles has emerged. So endangered in this area before in Southeast Asia, like all over, they are now nesting here for the first time in 5 years. The largest of all living turtles is the leatherbacks, and they have made 11 nests on Thai beaches just this spring, and more than at any time during the last 2 decades. So that really says a lot. They said this is a very good sign for us because turtles have a high risk of getting killed by fishing gear and humans disturbing the beach. Also, this is happening in Florida. The number of leatherback sea turtles have just skyrocketed compared to last year. So Juno Beach is most nested sea turtle beach in the entire world, with an estimated of 21,000 nests last year from just various different species. But 2 weeks into the summer of 2020, the nesting season of 2020, the staff found and marked 76 nesting sites for the leatherback, which is a significant increase over last year's count along the 9.5-mile beach. So since there's no dogs, there's no people walking over the nest, there's no exposing eggs, then there's a good chance that these eggs will survive the 60 days until they hatch. So they're pretty happy. It is a very good sign. Say our leatherbacks are coming in strong this year. We're excited to see our turtles thrive in this environment. Our world has changed, but these turtles have been doing this for millions of years, and it's just reassuring and gives us hope that the world is still going on. So there you have it. More leatherback turtles. All right, it's time for another break, but don't go anywhere. When we get back, I have more great stories to share with you. Stay tuned.
I want to talk to you guys about this amazing product I've been using lately called Hydrant. If you're like me and you want to kick the coffee habit, but you're worried about your energy levels depleting, to avoid the morning sluggishness and that midday slump, you need to make sure you're hydrated. It's super important. And that's where I've been using Hydrant. And for 25% off your first order, you can go to drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC at checkout. Hydrant is basically flavored electrolyte packets you mix directly into your water to make hydrating your body easy and delicious. And what I love about Hydrant, it's backed by research. The formula was developed by Oxford scientists to provide perfectly balanced, efficient hydration. Again, that's drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC for 25% off your first order. Another really cool thing about Hydrant, there's no synthetic colors or artificial sweeteners. The formula is vegan and you can choose between 3 different flavors or a variety pack. So for all my vegan friendly fellows out there, this one's for you. Again, this is drinkhydrant.com and enter promo code GSMC.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Welcome back to GSMC, America's Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Okay, let's jump right back into it. I got some more stuff about the environment. There's been so many good things happening to our environment amidst all this chaos out there in our world. So another pretty cool thing that's happening right now, it's not due to the pandemic, but I still think it's pretty cool. Some scientists have made history with this new discovery that's going to help save America's great coral reef. So scientists have just made this first in the world to reproduce rigid cactus coral in human care. Okay, so there's researchers from the Florida Aquarium, and they're quite excited about this discovery because it will one day be able to help conservationists restore America's Great Barrier Reef, which is the third largest reef in the world. So rigid cactus coral is actually known as a very long two words that I cannot pronounce, but they are the most common species of coral currently populating the Florida reef tract. So since the underwater ecosystem has quite been in danger following major outbreaks of stony coral tissue loss disease back in 2014, scientists have now been caring for the several coral samples that they were collected prior to the outbreaks, just that in hopes of being able to restore the reef to its former glory one day. So then they had this historic breakthrough, and this just took place earlier this month at the Florida Aquarium Center for Conservation in Apollo Beach. The work is part of the collaboration effort to save the Florida reef tract from extinction, and with the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the FWC, and National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the NOAA, National Marine Fisheries Service. So quite the collaboration of groups there. They say, our resolve to save Florida's endangered coral reef continues. And this historic breakthrough by our coral experts, our second in 8 months, provides additional hope for the future of all coral reefs in our backyard and around the globe. While our aquarium remains temporarily closed to the public as we support our community's well-being efforts, not even a global pandemic can slow us down when it comes to protecting and restoring America's Great Barrier Reef. So that was Roger German, the president and CEO of the Florida Aquarium. Just up until this month, the larvae of the ridge cactus coral had never been photographed or measured, and the larval release time had never been recorded. So these advances give us hope that the round-the-clock work we are doing will make a difference to help conserve the species and save these animals from extinction. To date, we now have been able to sexually reproduce 8 different species of coral affected by stony coral tissue loss disease at the Florida Aquarium Center for Conservation campus. Just last year, on August 20th, the Florida Aquarium also announced another breakthrough because scientists became the first in the world to be able to get Atlantic Ocean coral to spawn in a controlled laboratory environment. So they've been doing quite the work at the Florida Aquarium. The Florida Aquarium is committed to caring for threatened species of coral and leading critical initiatives that facilitate our ability to restore the Florida Reef Tract. Our coral conservation program used a science-based, impact-driven approach to increase the genetic diversity of coral offspring, maximize coral reproduction rates, and advance coral health. So those are the words from the aquarium's Senior Vice President of Conservation, Dr. Deborah Luke. The rigid cacti corals are often really, really bright colored with ridges that don't connect in the center. They are brooding coil, which means that their sperm is released into the water, but their eggs are not. And fertilization and larval development occurs inside the parent coral. The corals release a fully developed larvae that swims immediately after release. Brooding corals release fewer large larvae that already carry the symbiotic algae from their parents that is critical for survival. So the Florida Aquarium coral biologists noted that the larvae of the rigid cactus coral were the largest that they have ever seen and are working to document the entire process. It says they are so unusual that I actually was not sure it was coral larvae. So I guess nobody really knows how long the coral will continue to release the larvae or how many it will produce, because no one's documented this process before in the species. But here they are documenting the process, and I guess we will have to see what happens. The coral has continued to spit out more than 350 larvae, and it's continuing to count. So let's keep an eye on those numbers. Now, there's just been so many environmental stories today. I have a really, really cool one about a student who actually grew her own canoe. Yes, she grew her own canoe out of a mushroom. And she really thinks that fungus is our best ally in climate change. This is a pretty unique story. So she's from Nebraska, and she actually grew her own canoe. Her name is Katie Ayers. She grew this canoe out of mushroom, and has proven that the fungus is much more than just, your typical dinner ingredient that we always have, mushrooms. This sounds quite weird to me but I saw a picture and she's literally canoeing in a mushroom. Like, it's real. It's real. You can make a canoe out of a mushroom. So this is kind of her unique way, I guess, of informing the public about the utility of fungi and mycelium. So she used this organism, which is not a plant, it's not bacteria, it's not an animal, and she created a hardened watertight vessel. And she's literally, it's her canoe. She uses it as her canoe. She says, mushrooms are here to help us. They're a gift. There's so much more we can do with them beyond just food. It's so limitless. They're our biggest ally for helping the environment. So I guess this canoe is made of mycelium. So it's the dense, fibrous underground material that links together the various fruiting parts. So the toadstools we see on the ground, or our dinner plates, literally, those mushrooms. The mycelium can bind and form around a given skeleton. So she managed to grow the canoe simply by letting the mycelium sculpt itself around the wired frame of a canoe. Sounds pretty simple when you think of it that way, but it was sitting in a special room, I guess, with temperatures of 90 degrees Fahrenheit and 100% humidity. It took only 90 days for the mushrooms to cover the entire skeleton of the canoe, and now the canoe literally just weighs 100 pounds after it was dried in the hot summer sun. And it also still fruits after it's taken out on the water, so it's continually growing mushrooms and it's releasing spores while it's in the water. Pretty crazy. So she started this project. She reached out to Nebraska's Mushrooms Ash Gordon, who offered her a summer internship after she received a small grant from her university in Columbus, Nebraska, basically to pursue a mushroom-oriented climate change solution. She says, I always have very big ideas. So I see something and it's small and I just want to make it bigger and bigger. Since I'm from Nebraska, I love to fish. I've always wanted a boat. why not just grow it? So she did. She decided to grow her own boat. She says it really helps bridge the gap between people who didn't have an interest in mushrooms, maybe they don't like to eat mushrooms, and really have thought about other potential uses for them. The boat gave them something to look at and think about. So this project cost about $500 for spawn, tools, and other equipment, but this success has really helped their experiment, which is creating other hard objects, and they've created chairs, just landscape architecture materials, all out of mycelium. So mushrooms are already being used to create compostable car parts for Ford and IKEA, which is pretty cool. They've committed to transition much of its plastic packaging to a mushroom-based renewable alternative, which I had no idea there is a mushroom-based alternative to plastic. But that's pretty cool. And I guess Katie is set out to become, a sweet helper for the bees. She's inspired by research that showed how honeybees, which consumed mycelium, had lower levels of a harmful virus. So she's beginning to work with low-income students to create bee hotels. If you want to make a canoe, you just got to do a wire frame and get the right temperatures and grow it with mycelium, I guess. All right. That is all the stories that I have to share with you today. Thank you so much for joining GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Alyssa Jo. I appreciate you being here today. Please do not forget to hit that subscribe button, to like and follow us on social media, and leave a 5-star review. I look forward to next time. Thank you. Remember to stay positive, stay healthy, always look on the bright side whenever you can. I'll be back with more stories next time. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.